So most of the world basically practices the kind of marriage that we understand, which is a man and a woman exclusively with fidelity. That is not correct, folks. Actually, most of the world does not practice the kind of marriage that we think of as the absolute norm. That's just a fact, whether you think it's right or not. And that is one of the points that comes out in a book called Unhitched. It is a book by Judith Stacy, who has, over the years, been quite controversial in suggesting that we need to redefine our concept of marriage, or whatever it is that, well, we call it marriage, but whatever it's called in much of the rest of the world. And so Judith joins us now. Just for starters, let's just address the question. What goes on in most of the world? We know that polygamy is common within certain cultures. How widespread, for example, would polygamy be?
Well, first of all, up until the first half of the 20th century, there were more marriage systems in the world that were polygamous than monogamous. That's no longer the case, but there still are over 50 nations where polygamy, usually polygyny, meaning one man with two or more wives, is a very common practice. It's declining for lots of reasons, but it is also pretty entrenched.
Right. So,
and it's increasing here, but we don't call it polygamy. Look at Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, we call it infidelity, which is another topic which we'll get to in a moment.
Right.
But the premise of your book is that in America we need to redefine this whole marriage concept because there are other alternatives that we should consider. Can you explain?
Right. Well, I would say that in the U.S. we have already redefined our forms of intimacy and commitment and family life, but our ideology and many of our policies haven't caught up with what's going on the ground. The ideology is what you're talking about, the idea that there's one correct way of doing family life and that if it's not the only correct, it's the superior way, the married heterosexual couple and their children.
Can't society make, gay marriage as a separate issue now.
Okay.
But can't people agree that, yes, that is the superior way, and sometimes there are transgressions, but we don't want to change it necessarily?
I think that's a widespread view, and it's one that I don't hold.
Right. So what do you say? So this is ultimately a moral question, right, as to how we should define?
It's partly a moral question, but there are many levels to the morality. It's about what do you want to do to be most democratic, to protect most of the children, to protect most people who need care. Is it in anyone's interest to constantly say that the declining form of family is superior and everyone else is inferior?
Okay, so how does your concept, well, first of all, just sort of explain your concept and then explain how that protects children, let's say, or those that need protection.
Right. Well, my view is that we should get real and we should recognize the reality of family diversity that, for one thing, has always been part of our own history in the U.S. as well as around the world, and that is now definitely here to stay. And so I'm not out for inventing new forms, though in my book I do go and look at some pretty unusual family subcultures to kind of shake up the idea
around
the world, including in the U.S., to shake up the idea that there only is one way of doing family right and successfully, and to take on questions like whether children must have their own biological mother or father to turn out well. But I think what we need is more recognition that we should be distributing benefits to citizens, and we should be recognizing and helping to support families that have commitment to each other and are prepared to share resources and take care of children and other dependents.
But outside the framework.
Whatever the form. Whatever the form. And I give many examples of ways in which that could be the case.
Okay. Judith Stacy, the book is called Unhitched, very provocative book, as you have always been in the past. Thank you very much for joining us. I appreciate it very much.
You're very welcome.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, actually, it was sort of continuation on the theme of family today. We're going to be talking about pregnancy, and then we're going to be talking about CADS, the men who said what? We'll explain coming up on KRON 4 News Weekend.